Welcome to today's video on the perceived culture here at Brigham Young University that exerts a gravitational pull on both currently enrolled students and aspiring college students. We've interviewed different students and asked them various questions, and as we discuss these questions, we will also explore the cultural and scientific connections to be made.
Probably a 10.
A 10.
10.
10.
By inclined, like I wanted to come, or
Yes.
like I felt like I needed to come?
Both.
Both. I honestly never really considered any other options.
Probably a 10.
I actually didn't apply to go anywhere else.
A 10.
Oh, 10.
We interviewed almost 20 students with this question. Most of them said 10. But what does this number really mean?
For those students that answered this question with 10, or I didn't consider any other options, and even for those that answered below a 10, there was something that pulled all of them here to BYU.
Now, let's talk about gravity for a second. So, Newton was the first one to create the equation that the net force of gravity is equal to the gravitational constant multiplied by the mass of the first object and multiplied by the mass of the second object divided by the distance between the two objects squared. The gravitational constant effectively is just a really small number, which helps ensure that the net gravitational force remains very small and very weak to be in line with what we see in nature. The distance has a relationship with the net force, which is one that is an inverse squared, meaning that when the distance doubles, the net force of gravity will decrease by a factor of the distance squared.
Gravity is a force that pulls objects towards each other. Similarly, there is a force like gravity that pulls people who identify with certain aspects of BYU culture to BYU. And despite the fact that the students we interviewed all came from different backgrounds, there were commonalities between all of them. One of them being that they're all members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Since BYU is an LDS school, one would assume for there to be a connection between someone being LDS and their desire to attend BYU. We asked some people if they would have attended if they were not LDS.
Honestly, no, I wouldn't have. I probably would have gone to school with my best friends and do whatever they do.
Probably not.
No. I would have gone to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not.
No.
No.
No, probably not. If I'm being honest.
Students from every state in the US and from many foreign countries attend BYU. Slightly more than 98% of these students are active members of the LDS Church.
So many of these students, regardless of their home state or background, identify with each other as not only BYU students, but also members of the LDS faith. These key forces work together to pull and bring students. So as discussed earlier, the universal gravitational equation is all about attracting forces. Now, David will explain to us how these attracting forces and equation relates to culture.
Right, let's take a look. So this equation fits very well inside of a cultural dimension as well. So instead of distance physically, this becomes distance culturally, or rather, how similar are two cultures to each other. Also, the mass up above represents how intensely one feels or identifies with that culture. For example, a Catholic culture and a Mormon culture are more likely to be considered similar in nature because we share Christian values. However, some of my high school friends who want to drink and party, their cultures would be considered more distant culturally from that of our own, creating a less intense gravitational force between them.
I knew that I wanted to go somewhere that had high standards.
I like the idea of
of a community of people with shared values and a similar direction.
I feel like everyone is kind of on the same page about, they're like really open about their standards.
Honestly, I just felt like I don't know, it might be a cliche Mormon answer, but I just felt like that's where I needed to try to get into.
Culture-wise, I feel like I could blend a little better.
Probably just the biggest thing was I was a huge BYU fan since I was really little, because my parents were big BYU fans.
Like the atmosphere, I'm around people that are my same age that have the same LDS values, we share the same religion, very like-minded people.
When I initially applied, what was attractive to me about BYU was that it was a place where lots of people who share my belief would be studying, and I could be in an environment like that.
The personal reports from our interviews seem to aid our comparison. Mormons from all over the world feel attracted to BYU because they identify with the culture found here. In a scientific sense, the gravitational pull of BYU's perceived culture pulls on other like-minded populations of Mormons. This point is re-emphasized by the LDS member to BYU student ratio that, as mentioned earlier, is about 98.5%.
However, there are some anomalies that do not fit in with this gravitational equation and application alone. There are other factors not included in cultural similarity that pull students to BYU. Looking at these other factors leads us to consider that sometimes there are forces going on beside the large cultural similarity.
Some of those unexplained forces that we feel in culture are kind of like dark matter in physics. When scientists look at distant spinning galaxies and their rotation and speed, they've noticed that the gravitational forces inside are 5 times stronger than they should be for the total accounted mass in the galaxy. Because of this, scientists have since theorized of something called dark matter, particles too small to detect, but have a gravitational force that is actually really big. Not much more is known about dark matter, because it's merely a term that we use to talk about something that we know exists, but can't see.
And so in looking at these attracting forces, bringing students to BYU, we observe that there is a pull bringing students here that is something unmeasurable too. This unmeasurable force extends beyond merely the number of like-minded Mormons at BYU. Sometimes individuals describe it as a feeling, and they just felt like they needed to come to BYU, or something was just telling them to come. This feeling or this intuition can be described as cultural dark matter.
From all that we've talked about, gravity influences daily life on Earth and is a phenomenon that interplays throughout the universe. Gravity, however, is not merely an attraction force between physical objects, but can be between peoples, cultures, and inanimate objects.